All right, we are live. Jamie, great to have you on the podcast. How you doing?
I'm well, Jake. Thanks for inviting me. It's a real honor to be on your podcast, and look forward to getting into some meaty subjects.
Yeah, mate, this is great. It's good to bring this all together. And Jamie White is the co-founder of brandpartnerships.co, and we've been talking now for about 3 years or even longer when we first got in touch. Um, so yeah, first of all, Jamie, you can help us out. How did this call come about, and what was our conversation earlier today?
Yeah, so yeah, as you've mentioned, we've been regularly in touch for the last sort of few years, and it's always an absolute pleasure to talk to you, largely to hear your enthusiasm and general sort of drive towards doing something entrepreneurially, and so that's a really nice subject which I'm really happy to help contribute, listen, provide some guidance or direction if that's helpful. But certainly to hear obviously what you're looking to try and accomplish. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you. We'd had a quite challenging conversation this morning. I'm always at the end of a phone if someone wants a piece of advice or just a bit of like I need to like vent or get off my chest some challenges. And I think the life of an entrepreneur, life of a business owner is something which doesn't suit everybody. And so when you do come up against some challenges, often you feel like you're a bit alone. And I think that's a common thread from the people I talk to who own and run businesses, is that you feel like you're the only person there. You might work as part of a wider team, but often that's not always the case. That you can perhaps share some of those challenges with the wider team around you, so you can often feel quite isolated. So we had a nice in-depth conversation this morning where it was just trying to identify how to get over some short-term challenges and perhaps find some direction, see the sort of wood for the trees.
Mate, that was the nicest way you could have put it.
That's all right.
You're so sweet. Yeah, so basically this morning called up Jamie just shitting myself because I'm trying to make the dream happen. I'm trying to become an entrepreneur, but what I realized was I'm doing that as well as everything else around it, like paying rent, being a family member, being a good boyfriend, and all these other things that you naturally take their impact. Um, so Jamie was there, and we've turned it into a positive. We're now going to talk about the peaks and troughs of entrepreneurship and what it's all about, and it's not pretty. So, yeah, we learned that this morning, and we're two guys at very different stages in our lives who both have similar dreams and characteristics. But what is it about you, Jamie, in terms of your characteristics, your childhood experiences, good or bad, that you think makes you an entrepreneur?
That's a really good question, and I think if I go back to probably the early part of my career, so I'm 52 and I've been involved with running businesses for some time now, and so um, it wasn't perhaps something that I was looking for. Perhaps if I look back towards my early 20s, it was I wanted to find a sort of a career or something that I enjoyed, and it was actually and it was 98 that I fell into the world of recruitment. So and I just loved it. I love the business aspect. I love talking to clients. I love being client facing. I liked winning new business, and so that was something which really resonated with I think probably my character, and certainly it had a number of tick boxes that were things that I was really pleased to kind of accomplish. And I went off and after a couple of years, then worked for another startup business in recruitment. So I had that sort of exposure to building a business from scratch, and I was relatively still quite green to the industry at the time. Fast forward another couple of years, I then went out on my own. So I figured that if I'm able to do this for somebody else, then perhaps I could do this for myself. And again, that comes with a number of challenges and where do I find the money after you've earned a salary every month and you get paid every month? Well, then that suddenly stops and that becomes a very real challenge. As obviously we spoke about this morning, as you go from having a regular income to, okay, I don't get paid at the end of the month, but I've still got bills to pay, rent and council tax and all those kind of things. So this is something which I got accustomed to, and I was never really. I guess at that point in my life, I was probably in my mid to late 20s. I wasn't really I think worried about the implications if it didn't work because I figured there would be other employment opportunities out there if it's something that didn't kind of transpire to be a success. And I think that was all fine, and it was really the birth of my son in 2005, which was the kind of catalyst for going back into full-time employment. I was under a little bit of pressure from my girlfriend at the time, who was very keen for me to have a regular income, regular job, so that she didn't have to worry about the mortgage being paid every month, and so that was something which. I think in hindsight, I probably may have had a different view on now, but at the time, there was external pressure for me to have a normal sort of regular life, normal hours. That's the other thing which people don't talk about who have perhaps contractual employment with companies is that the life of an entrepreneur doesn't really stop at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. You can be well into the evening, first thing in the morning, halfway through the night, having an idea, and those things are kind of part and parcel with the job of running or owning or starting a business. And so these are all kind of factors which have an impact on others, not limited to your close friends, family. I've often had to cancel social engagements because something's come up with a piece of work that I need to deal with, and I've got a couple of friends who work regular, 9 to 5 hours, and they're like, "Well, Jamie, why can't you just come out? Why can't you just drop that?" And I'm like, "Mate, it doesn't work like that. You've got to, you really kind of like jump on the idea when you've got it, so that you can sort of see that through because it could be the million-dollar idea that you need to kind of move the business forwards." So during my recruitment career, I think I was really fortunate to gain a lot of like real world experience as well as working for myself. And I was always, I guess I always had quite a strong appetite for risk. And again, if I look across my peer group, my social circle of friends, there are some that have that and some that don't, and that's absolutely fine. This kind of life as an entrepreneur is not something for everybody. I think it's very easy to think it's easy, and you always see the success stories. You look at anyone in the public eye, and well, they've made a ton of money and they've got successful businesses. That comes with a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and everything else, and sacrifice. And that's something which I think people don't often think about. And again, I go back to my earlier point about being very isolating. It's often you don't have lots of fit folk to talk to about sort of challenges and problems, and they only see, well, you're only working a few hours a day, and it must be easy for you because you've got a team of people. But that team of people needs to be paid every month. That team of people have expectations, and those things come with a degree of responsibility. So I think my career has been something which I didn't go looking for, but I kind of fell into finding a way in recruitment that I really enjoyed. I then ran my own and other recruitment businesses for many years, and it was only really when I got into the technology sector in 2015 did I have a change of complete direction, going into something that was a software as a service. So it was a verification product for students. So it was validating student status so they could gain access to discounts for leading retailers. That I found myself in a very different sphere. And again, that was something which I thoroughly enjoyed, but it was obviously working for another business. But again, it was a startup. So I saw the transition from a team of 20 people to a team of 300 over the course of 6 years. So enormous growth with new offices being built, new offices being opened in New York and Melbourne. Whilst I wasn't directly involved with those, seeing the company expand because of perhaps some of the work that I was either directly or indirectly involved with, which was hugely interesting to me. So going into working for myself again or with my co-founder, my business partner, was something which again wasn't something I was unused to. So I was used to kind of going out and doing something where you have to get your sleeves rolled up, metaphorically speaking, and sort of really kind of pitch in. But it was something which I was very familiar with that terrain, given that I'd done that in my 20s. So that journey for me was not too uncomfortable, but I'm also at a point in my life where I've got another younger child, and again the expectation that there's still bills to be paid. But I think I've weathered that fairly well over the last sort of few years, and being able to come out the other side with, okay, I think we're on a good thing here, and the business is doing what it should be.
You mentioned risk and talking about leaping into entrepreneurship, but then also leaping into full-time employment. How do you think risk is misinterpreted by some people?
Yeah, risk is something which is a very, I think, a very interesting topic if you isolate it away from just the business itself. I think you've got to be somebody, I think, who is happy with accepting and taking on a level of risk which isn't for everybody. You know, if you look at the volume of businesses that are started and the number of people who are in employment, you know, it's vastly weighed heavily on the number of people who are actually employed, and you know, maybe the risk for them is just too great to consider going out and doing something for themselves. I would say that if I look back at the people I know who have started businesses, I don't think there's like none of them are, and I mean this very kindly, none of them are rocket scientists. None of them are Elon Musk. None of them are that top 0.1% who are exceptionally bright and gifted to go and build a PayPal, build SpaceX, or build like that's not their, you know, they've taken that level of risk, and they are fairly regular people in terms of their academic background. You know, these are a close circle of friends of mine who have gone off and, you know, started businesses. You know, none of them have gone on, and, you know, they're not people who are educated to the nth degree. They are just people who are happy to stand outside of the circle of being entirely um, supported by a salary and supported by an employer. And that, like I say, that's not for everybody. So I think those that are happy to navigate themselves outside of that sphere and understand that there are, you know, there are circumstances if you don't perform, or if the business doesn't perform, there are, you know, things that happen. There are the results that perhaps aren't people aren't happy with. But I think ultimately, if you're happy to move outside of that comfort zone and push yourself and have a strong business plan and have an idea and do something which is new to the market, or something that is better than your nearest competition, then there's no reason why people can't go and do those things. I think risk is something you've got to be really happy with. I'll give you an example. So I've got I won't tell you the business they're in, but I've got two very good friends, and they run a company, and it's a services company. And they were both talking about setting up a business, and one was quite happy with the level of risk of setting up this business and then taking a lesser salary, but the, you know, the reward if the business is successful is it was going to be greater, and the other wanted a higher salary and a lesser percentage of the ownership of the business. Now that's going back, I think, probably at least 10 years since they started the firm. They've just sold the business, and one has walked away with a truckload of money compared to the other because he put his name across the door, and he was very happy with that level of risk, and he's got a larger ownership of the business than the other. And that's fine because they've both earned like really well, but there's a country mile between the results and the and what he will, you know, what one of the shareholders will take away from the other. So I think it's something which, you know, if in hindsight, perhaps the other is looking, oh, I should have gone in 50-50 rather than, I think his percentage was 15 or 20% of the business. And I think, you know, looking back, that could have been something which, you know, you might have some regrets on, but like I say, it doesn't suit everybody. Risk is something which is very personal to you. And if you're happy to navigate those sometimes treacherous waters, then you're okay. But otherwise, you know, perhaps, you know, it's not for you.
Yeah, that's what I really am interested in is we all know that we could take the risk. We all know that it's possible. And that we're lucky enough to live in a country where something like that is doable. If you do your own thing, you can go for it. What do you think it is about you and the entrepreneurs that do take the risk? What is it that's different that separates you from the people that hedge their bets on 15%?
Yeah, I would say I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. I know that's quite a cliche statement, but I'm not somebody who is in fact if I look at myself, and if this is a very this probably needs a bit of a couch and somebody in a with a psychiatry degree, but somebody have said, like, you know, how do you assess yourself in that way? I think I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. I am somebody who is. I think I'm probably quite complacent and bored if I'm in the same kind of environment where I'm not challenged or I don't find it difficult. So I think I kind of like that feeling of kind of exhilaration and probably to a degree some fear that it might not work or this might be difficult. And I think and again, that's not for everybody, but you know, I don't sort of sit around and think about it. But I think if I was to sort of sit back and look at, okay, what is my personality? What is my character? And what's that makeup? I think it's probably like that. You know, I don't do things like bungee jump, or, you know, I've done a skydive, but I don't do things which I think, oh, that would make me really uncomfortable. So I know probably where my line is. And so again, there's things that if I feel really uncomfortable, then I know that that's probably the degree of which I will go to, or the line I will go to, and I won't cross over that. But I think perhaps it's more than perhaps other people, and that's why I'm probably open to having that level of risk, or level of tolerance towards things that are uncomfortable. I also think that it's if I don't know the answer to something, I learned very well a long time ago that I'm happy to hold my hand and go, I don't know how to do that. I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at, and if I can't do something, I'll know I need to ask somebody. And I think there are people who don't want to do that. They want to be seen as, well, I'm the owner, I'm the boss, I should know all the answers. But actually, if you listen to a lot of the very smart people in the room, and people like Gary Vaynerchuk and others, they talk about how they don't need to know all the answers. They're there to have people around them who are the smartest at any given discipline. And I think if you've got that mentality and very happy to ask for questions, please, as a caveat, I'm not in the same social or earning circle as Gary V, but I
Not
think you're getting
yet.
my point.
Not
No,
yet.
no, yeah, that's it. But I think you get my point is that they're happy to say, look, I can't do that. That thing is not for me, and there are better people at it than I. So I think there's that approach, which also has been very helpful in me understanding what I'm good at and what I'm happy to push myself towards, and perhaps what I'm not.
And when you talk about how entrepreneurship is 24/7, it could be at midnight, you've got a good idea. If you were an entrepreneur and you were me at my age at 25, where I got no mortgage, no kids, how do you think your day to day would be different in building your business?
Love that question. I don't know that it would be terribly different. I think there's the thing that one of the things that I fall back on is sort of that flexibility. Now, it doesn't mean that, if I need to go and do something, I need to, pop out at lunchtime and it takes me 90 minutes rather than an hour, or 90 minutes rather than half an hour. I've got that flexibility. But equally, I'm taking calls with some of our American agencies, some of the businesses that we deal with in the US, late afternoon, early evening, right into the evening, because we operate on very different time zones. So I think there is that sort of flexibility that, what I might give with one part of the day, I'll have to give back in the other part. I think in terms of my how I would deal with things probably differently in my 20s is, I guess, I think there's things that only experience and time can give you, and the more you can learn, absorb, and take in from others, and you try and get ahead, I think the sooner you can try and do that, and soon you can learn as much you can about business, and that's everything from HR, finance, banking, all the regulations with regard to either employing people or not. And so I think if you can do some of those things and learn the fundamentals, that's a really good sort of starting point. And I think having that, I mean, I still treat every day as a bit of a school day, if I'm honest. There's no day that I think, oh, I know it all, because there's always a time I go, oh, that's an interesting bit of information which I didn't have, or that thing's broken, I need to go and fix that. So I think they're things which I think perhaps are probably different for me now than probably when I was in my 20s. But I think that approach to business, as in, oh my God, there's an idea which could be hugely important to the company moving forwards. I'll give you an example. So I was invited onto a podcast at the end of last year. It was with an affiliate agency. I've known the lady for a long time, and she said, "Look, Jamie, would you like to come on and talk about the business?" And I said, "Absolutely, that'd be great." I'd not done a podcast before, not been invited onto one. In fact, I had, but it'd been a long time ago, and it was a very different set of circumstances with an affiliate network. But I'd not done something like this for a long time, and so I said, "Yeah, I'll be absolutely delighted to." So fast forward a few weeks, and I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I said, "Oh, this has gone really well, I thought, and I really enjoyed it." And that was where it sort of inspired me to then set up a podcast for our business, which we did. And again, it probably wasn't something in our thought process, and it wasn't something we were looking to do immediately, and it probably would have come to it at some point. But I thought, well, look, there's other people doing it. I can quite happily talk to people on camera, and I'm happy to sort of interview people. I'm very keen to hear what their stories are. Obviously, we deal with sort of brand to brand collaborations. Obviously that's our market. So listening to brands like Totally Chocolonely or Wirecare, or a variety of other businesses about what their experience is like, for me was very nice and rewarding. But again, it's that flexibility. but there's an idea to do something. Let's sort of build on it and let's get it launched because it seems like the right thing to do rather than, well, we didn't think about it until Q3 of 2025. Therefore, why should we do it earlier? But actually, it's probably that flexibility which is probably inherent in probably most entrepreneurs.
Yeah, mate, even this podcast, I mean, how long have I been talking about it and
Sure.
not doing it? As just we always make excuses like as to why we can't start, why we can't do something. Um, and it's never ideal, but it's a start.
Yeah.
And I think if you've got an idea, then it is important to go for it.
Yeah.
And then when you're in the thick of it, that's when you realize that the real challenge begins. Um, you said to me earlier today, it's just a tough day.
Yeah.
What is your philosophy behind that sentence, and how does it help you in your life?
Yeah, I would love to take credit for that, but actually, I can't tell you where I heard it, but I heard it some time ago, and I'm going back several years, and the quote was, "It's just a tough day, not a tough life," or "It's not, just a bad day, not a bad life," and I am reminded on several occasions that there's days when something in our technology platform it breaks or something doesn't work right or a client says look this isn't for us or whatever it might be, and so I have to remind myself, and it's a very it's almost a very physical reminder for me that it's just okay, that's today, draw a line under it, think about it overnight, and then come back tomorrow with another idea or come back tomorrow with renewed vigor into whatever we're doing. So it's something which I kind of fall back on. I remind myself I've got two younger children, one who's almost 20, one who's 12, and say, look, whenever they're having a tough time, and again, my 12-year-old, she often remarks like, "Daddy, it's just like, oh, my life is so hard. Is it really like you're at school for 6 hours a day? You're not paying tax. You're not doing your own washing. There's someone to feed you. It's all that kind of stuff." And so I'm not diminishing how she perceives the world of how tough things are because she's got history homework and geography homework and things that she has to work on. But I try and instill in her that today is just a bit difficult. Today is just a bit challenging. Take a deep breath. Try and talk it through with someone. Talk to me. Talk to your mum. And try and understand, what is it that's causing you some frustration, and then just remind you that tomorrow is another day. There's things to look forward to. You've got summer break coming up, your holiday. I mean, it's just stuff like that, which, is just that constant reminder that today, while it feels like the world is imploding, and I think as entrepreneurs, it's very easy to feel that your life is coming to a grinding halt because of all these kind of problems. And oh my God, we can't afford to pay that because, and we've got this software bill coming in, and like all those things which we all face. But tomorrow is just a different day, and you never know when the next kind of if you were in a selling mentality where the next yes is coming from. So loads of people have said, no, this isn't for us. This just doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. But actually the next one goes, do you know what? This is genius. Love what you're doing. Let's like use your platform, or let's like get together and talk about collaboration or whatever. And I think it's very easy to think that, just because you're having a difficult day, difficult fortnight, whatever, that it'll be like it forever because it won't. And you've just got to persevere, keep doing, believe in what you are doing is making a material difference to others. And I think as long as you focus on just keeping up that momentum, it can't go on indefinitely, and you will find a great result, which will just give you that I knew I was on the right path, and I know what we're doing is going to make a difference to others.
I also realized today that even though I'm at one of the hardest points I've been in my life, it's also going to be one of the easiest points I've ever had in my life. Um, oh, sorry, there's some cleaning. Um, in terms of that hardship and that grit and resilience, what do you make of these buzzwords like work-life balance?
Now it's funny. I went from, if I go back to 2015 to 2021, 22, I was in London right up until lockdown. So I live in Kent, but I was in London every day. I was in North London by 7:30 in the morning. I spent a lot of time out of the house, and as a result, I didn't really know any different. So that was that was my routine, and I'd be home at sort of 7 o'clock of the evening. I'd have a quick half an hour chat with my then much younger daughter, and pack off to bed. I'd have a couple of hours, but by 9 o'clock, I'm ready to kind of hit the bed because I'm up at 5:30 in the morning. So that was my routine, and that was fine. Changing that to something which then allowed me some time to be able to, like, I take her to school now in the mornings, and so again that goes back to that flexibility about having that time and being able to do that from 8 to 8:30 in the morning. I think is a really nice thing. It's changed our relationship, mine and hers. It does mean I have to, and this is the bit I do challenge, I struggle with, is that I go from waking up in the morning, I've got something to do with the business, I've got these ideas, I've got these thoughts. I then have to kind of shelve that, take it to school, be the parent, then come back and then switch, Jamie work person mode again. They're things that I internally struggle with, as opposed to just dedicating myself to just being at work or just being the parent. But that aside, so I have I think, now a different work-life balance than probably when I was in my 20s, when I devoted all my time to work, and I would be at work a lot, be work for 10 or 11 hours a day when I was in recruitment early days, and that was something which again I was not unhappy with. I did it voluntarily. I worked long hours, because I thoroughly enjoyed it, and so I think where I am now, I do have a different probably view on it than probably I did when I was in my 20s. If I was at your stage of life and I had the option to go into an office or work remotely, I think I would probably go into an office because you're physically there with other people, and you get to like mingle and talk and have those sort of water cooler moments with people that you wouldn't do if you were working behind a laptop. But that's my own sort of personal view. But I think having the work-life balance that I have at the moment, there are times when I need to drop things. And I'll give you an example. There are a number of times where I have emails of an evening which are coming from our American clients. And so they'll come into my inbox, and I'm sat there just catching up with people, my girlfriend and daughter from their day. And I then have to completely stick. I've got to go and deal with this. And I rush to the home office here. I then carry on with work, and I do that for another half an hour. That for me is that balance between being at home and shutting off, which I don't have the luxury of, clearly. And it's something which, again, if I put myself in the shoes of my clients, if I don't deal with it that evening on their time, they won't see it for another 24 hours, by which point it might miss their deadline for something. So I have to be respectful for what's making life easier for my clients. So again, I try and do what I can when I need to, but that does mean that sometimes that balance between work and the time I've got at the house is something that is compromised, outside of those normal sort of working hours that we talked about.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this idea of like having to really adapt your lifestyle and adapt what you're doing. Do you feel like there are people that just don't want to change and so they don't start in the first place because they maybe have some sort of limitations of themselves that mean that they don't start what it is they really want to do?
Yeah, I do, and again, I know several people who have, I think, absolutely got the ability. They've got the uh, knowledge to do it. I think it comes down to two things, probably confidence and belief that they are able to. So no matter what you say to somebody, if they don't have if their glass is always like under half full, and they've got that kind of view on life, it won't work for me because I can't do it because I'll never find the money because it'll never be a success because I think you could do that forever. And like you said earlier, you're for every day you're not starting something is a day where you don't get that time back. Now, I remind myself, at the tender age of 52, that that's absolutely a real thing, right? So, I don't have that, and that time. I'm appreciate I've probably got maybe another 15 or so years of work in me, which is great. But that time goes very quickly. They say that when you're younger, it's just like blink and you miss it, and that's absolutely the case. So I think there are people who just don't have that confidence or that belief they could do it, and therefore they just put it off and go, that's for other people. That whole thing is for other people.
Jamie, thank you very much for coming on to the pod. I really appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge because so much of what we talk about is about business, but it's also about life. And it feels like when you start your own thing and go on your own path, those two are yeah, they're pretty hard to avoid or split them up. So thank you very much for being able to put the two together. And yeah, really appreciate you coming on. Cheers.
You're very welcome. Lovely to see you.
Cheers. See ya.
Bye for now.